Welcome to Monday. It's December 15th, 2025, your day with a podcast brought to you by the Advocates Injury Attorneys. If you've been injured in an accident, don't face it alone. Get an experienced local Wyoming attorney on your side. Free consultations at WyomingAdvocates.com or call 307-800-1952. You deserve an advocate. Well, complicated. There are a lot of moving parts in the weather forecast here over the next 7 days, but there's a lot of similarities to what's been happening. We'll talk about that here in a moment. Boy, it was really tale of two different worlds, as you can see there from the rime ice on the grass there in Sidney, Nebraska this weekend as Arctic air came into the plain states, out onto the plains east of the Continental Divide. But once you got further west in higher altitude areas, the Arctic air was just a kiss, and as you'll see here with other photos, quite a bit of winter weather in that Arctic area, but then the Pacific area, there was a lot of brown, a lot of nothing. Hate to say this, don't shoot the messenger, but we have another high wind event brewing. Could it be as intense as what we saw this past week? The answer is yes, unfortunately. This is going to be especially true beginning tonight and probably lasting into Thursday morning, with the peak of the wind probably being in that Wednesday, Thursday time frame. Now, part of that wind will be with two fast-moving, energetic, and moist Pacific waves. One moving across the region basically late Tuesday through Thursday morning. There's another wave of Pacific moisture that'll come into the Rockies over the weekend. Now, both of these waves will be good news for the mountains, the ski areas of Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, more snow for Montana, as these Pacific waves come through, but they're not the type of systems that give you upslope. So while there will be snow showers, a little bit of snow on the plains with these waves, it'll be the high country that benefits. Part of this is this Omega block. I tell you folks, it is not going anywhere. These blocking patterns can be extremely persistent and can sometimes lock in. And so what's happening, the way the jet stream is behaving all the way out into Bering Sea, very far from here, is that as long as that Omega block continues, the deep Arctic air will continue to get funneled into the nation's midsection in the northeastern United States. We'll continue to have heavy precipitation in the Pacific Northwest. But in between the Arctic air and the heavy Pacific Northwest precipitation, there in the middle, there's not going to be much going on other than these high wind events like what we're going to see here this week. Now, getting into Christmas week, too many questions to really give you any type of outlook on Christmas weekend. I don't want to be Lucy pulling the football away. We're just going to have to address Christmas week as we get a little bit closer. The Omega block, the strong Pacific jet stream winds, all of these things are not being handled very well by the computer modeling. Here's a cool shot from Casper where the Arctic air did come in. And no, Michelle says that's not snow on the ground, but that is frost, that rime ice, like I showed you there in the Sidney, Nebraska area, where you get that Arctic air to come in and moisture freezes and causes that rime ice. And here's another great example of where the Arctic air came in. Beautiful landscape shot there of the rime ice on the trees and on the grass and on the fences there. And then up along the Bighorns, where the snow is deeper and more widespread, where that Arctic air boundary came on in. You can see it there in Story. Beautiful shot of the Christmas tree in Sinclair, Wyoming. How about that for a view shot near Pinedale there of the Wyoming Range and Triple Peak there in the middle. And the cold, as we know, spreading into the Great Lakes. Chicago has had one of its coldest starts to winter since the late 70s. Hard to imagine what that type of comment is like when you had temperatures in that Denver Broncos game yesterday in the 60s at kickoff. But closer to the Arctic boundary, beautiful shot there from Belle Fourche, and some beautiful clouds. Again, beautiful sunrises and sunsets. And then underneath the high pressure, as you'd expect in the deserts of Nevada, there you go. Beautiful blue skies, and that will be the case again here for the start of the week. Although this part of the country, the Great Basin here, is going to start to see some weather move in, especially Christmas week. Now, as we take a look at the satellite imagery, we continue to see the Pacific Northwest, British Columbia, Washington, Western Oregon just getting creamed by strong, moist jet stream winds, funneling that moisture in. But then you get downsloping east of the Cascades, and the moisture gets dried out and captured by a lot of the mountains. And then we can continue to see the high pressure ridge that will start the week across the Intermountain West and the Western High Plains. So weather's going up, over, and down. And there you can certainly see that. There's the blocking pattern off the Aleutians. We have this low that's just driving that moisture into the Pacific Northwest and Western Canada. And as we showed you last week, the polar vortex is reorganizing, getting more centered northwest of Hudson Bay. But generally, a west to east flow across the nation will bring moderating temperatures to this part of the world here over the next couple of days. But at the end of the week, there's another Arctic push that'll be coming through. There's the Omega block. And this is something that we're going to be talking about here in the days ahead. This pattern has just been so persistent. And every time it looks like it goes away, it comes back. So it keeps this low here, and it keeps us driving the strong Pacific jet stream winds coming in. But this type of flow does not let the Arctic air come into the western United States. I know I've drawn a lot on here, but basically, until we see this go away, we're going to be in what we call a persistence pattern, persistent forecasting, which is the weather for the week ahead may be a lot like the week before it until that pattern completely goes away. Now, as we get into Wednesday, we do have this little wave right here. Doesn't look like much, but it is going to take moisture and cold air from the Gulf of Alaska, push it into the Pacific Northwest, and go into the northern Rockies. The polar vortex is expanding a little bit, and it is pushing some colder air a little bit more to the south by midweek. As this system comes across, it's going to be producing a lot of weather. We have more flood warnings and winter storm warnings for the Pacific Northwest, high wind warnings for Montana up here, and we're going to see high wind watches and warnings for southeastern Wyoming already as we get into late tonight and tomorrow night. These are freeze warnings for the Gulf Coast. Yep, freezing along the Gulf Coast while it's sunny and warm in the Rockies. Precipitation through Wednesday morning looks like this. You can see the Pacific Northwest, British Columbia, the Canadian Rockies, but now Northern California is getting into the action as things are a little bit more south now. So that's going to drive in some heavier rain for far Northern California. But you can see through Wednesday morning here, nothing going on. But things change as we get to Wednesday, Thursday. What I'm showing you here are the 300 millibar winds, or the 30,000 foot winds, starting today. So you can see the winds aloft, not bad. So it's going to be another decent day where the wind really won't be blowing like what we saw this past weekend. But look what happens as we go one day at a time. So this is today. There's tomorrow morning. You can see the strong jet stream winds moving into Washington and Oregon. This is Wednesday. The winds really increase. Then look what happens by Thursday morning. Oh my. These winds right here, you see these gray areas? So we're talking winds over 170 knots. We were very similar with what we had last week, except they were more west to east last week. These are more northwest to southeast. So that may not be the perfect setup to what we had last week, but nonetheless, there is another significant blowover risk on I-80 and I-25, even in this pattern right here, Interstate 70 into Colorado as we get into Wednesday and Thursday. So we have another high wind event brewing. Now with this wave that comes through Wednesday and Thursday, you're going to see wind gusts like this. Look at those wind gusts, even into Alberta, Montana, the Western Dakotas. I mean, it's just going to scream again over a large part of the West. So enjoy today is the message. And then these winds will spread out across the plains here as we get on into Thursday night and Friday. So buckle up. This is where the wave will be by Thursday morning. It's going to drag Arctic air into the Midwest and Great Lakes again by the end of the week. But since it's going to drag in moisture, we will see snow. So we will see some snow late Tuesday night, Wednesday into Thursday morning in Wyoming's western mountains, the northern Wasatch, Colorado's mountains, southern Wyoming mountains get a bit of snow. You can see the trail of heavy snow, another Alberta clipper, but it stays more along the U.S.-Canadian border with that wave going on through. Then we get into the weekend. Strong and moist jet stream winds coming right off the area. So notice we're basically in the same situation. It's just these waves coming through. But the colder air is a little bit further south. It's as the polar vortex expands a little bit, it will make it a little bit colder. And the strong jet stream winds will pick up Pacific air and just drive it into the Pacific Northwest and the Northern Rockies. And there you go, your precipitable water. We've got a little bit of a mini atmospheric river developing as we get into late Friday, Saturday, into early Sunday from California through the Great Basin and through the Central Rockies and into the upper Midwest. So literally just basically strong, extremely strong jet stream winds and cold air loft getting driven in. That's a great way to make it snow in the mountains. And there's a little bit of a better, easier way to see where that's lining up. Now, when we look at the integrated vapor transport, water vapor transport, so when you see blue shading like this, this means the moisture's deep. So there's going to be an axis. It's going to be narrow, but there's going to be an axis of snow, mainly in the mountains, but snow showers will be reaching the plains this weekend. So we kind of need to keep an eye on Saturday's weather if traveling. There could be some wintry weather in the mix. This is the 2-day period rather, as we get on into Friday and into Saturday with the next wave. So you can see it's getting a little bit further south, and along that vapor axis, where I showed you where that moisture is, there's going to be another round of snow and another good round of snow in the high country again. So those are the two mountain snow events, but you can see the lower elevations, this is just not the way to get snow. Yes, there will be snow showers and maybe some snow squalls on Saturday. And that's just something we'll have to watch. Again, as we get closer to Christmas week, we'll try to talk about Christmas week, but not just yet. The regional travel forecast will be important this week, especially with another high wind event. So don't forget to subscribe and check it out on our YouTube channel. Have yourself a good Monday. We'll see you tomorrow.